Could you use an extra $25,000 to buy a home? Well, Vice President Kamala Harris is maybe offering just that. We're going to talk about it today and see if that's a good idea for the housing market.
I keep it real. I keep it real. I keep it real. Just keep it real.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Sam Hartman, keeping it real estate here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And as always, I am coming to you to bring context and clarity to the real estate world so that you guys can be confident consumers when it comes to making real estate decisions. And we are in the Keeping It Real Estate studios, the new studios, and I have my very first guest in here with me to discuss this topic. This is Seth Benett with Hallmark Home Mortgage. Seth, how we doing?
Doing great. Thanks for the opportunity to join you here. Looking forward to our conversation and being the guinea pig here in the new studio.
You know, it'll ebb and flow in the new studio, but I'm excited about the topic. I'm excited to have the conversation with you because you're one of my local partners. You're someone I trust to advise my clients on the lending side. And, you know, we each see things from a little bit of a different angle when it comes to the real estate market. So I wanted to have this conversation about Vice President Kamala Harris's plan for housing, regardless of whether you're blue or red or purple or any shade of purple in between. You know, if a presidential candidate's talking about housing, I'm going to listen, and I want to see what it's going to really look like in effect for the housing market. So that's what we're going to talk about today, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. This type of stuff affects me and you potentially, and the grander public, whether or not you support that candidate potentially. So it's great to talk about it, see how things could play out.
Yeah. And I think both of our goals is, you know, ultimately we want the housing market to be healthy.
Absolutely.
And I think we both would agree that over the last 4 or 5 years, although the market has been intense, I wouldn't call that a healthy housing market. Would you?
Historically, no.
Yeah.
It depends on your metrics of how you want to measure that out. But in general, I don't think I would call it healthy. No, there's certain things that we could change about that.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's happened over the last couple of years. The pandemic and then the housing boom following. We saw interest rates drop substantially. I mean, what was the lowest interest rate you were closing buyers at during that time?
Yeah, it was September of 2021. I'll never forget this. September of 2021. I had locked someone in on a 30-year fixed, no points. It was no to limited points. And it was a larger loan amount, but it was 2.75% on a 30-year. That was a 30-year. And then people were getting 15 years with limited no points, like 2. I know of people that paid some points and locked in the ones.
That's insane. That's wild.
And free money.
It is. I mean, the Fed funds rate, if you don't know, the Fed funds rate is basically what the government charges banks to borrow that then they lend to businesses. So the Fed funds rate isn't necessarily what the mortgage rate is, but it kind of tends to ebb and flow off of that. And during that post-pandemic boom, it was zero.
Yeah.
The government was giving money to the banks. And that's what really ultimately resulted in the 9% inflation that we saw. A lot of money injected into the economy through stimulus plans, but also lending because interest rates were so low. And which is really what led to the fire of a market, the ignition of such a wild market for the last 4 years. And now here we are today in 2024 coming to pay the piper. You know, bills are coming due and the housing market is kind of feeling that shift. The lending market is feeling that shift, and really the economy as a whole is starting to see that shift in everything as well. So interest rates were one huge piece of that post-pandemic housing boom that really lit the market on fire. Remote work orders from companies was a big part of that boom. That was taking maybe demand that was in larger cities and spreading it kind of out across the country. I mean, Boise, Idaho was one of the hottest real estate markets during the post-pandemic boom. Boise, Idaho isn't necessarily a city that you think of as a real hot spot, but what it did was it gave some of those California, those coastal, more expensive markets, it gave those people somewhere to go with the outdoors, the better weather. And so markets like that just saw these booms, you know, fortunately, and I always make this talking point with customers. What I love about Fort Wayne's market is how conservative of a market we are.
Yep.
I don't know if you know these numbers, but during the great financial crisis in 2008 and the years to follow, the national average price drop in homes, depreciation, was 26%.
Yep.
Do you know what Fort Wayne, Indiana's was?
I think it was like less than 2.
It was 5%.
So it was a 5
over a 5-year period.
Okay.
So on an annual average, Fort Wayne's price depreciated 1% per year for 5 years after that.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. I was thinking of the annual, but that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by conservative. The swings of real estate in Fort Wayne, we're swinging, between a gap like this, a small swing, whereas the coastal, the vacation markets are taking much bigger swings.
Absolutely.
The post-pandemic housing boom, the national average price appreciation was right around 20%. Fort Wayne's was 16%. So we still saw amazing appreciation,
but conservative relative
to the market as a whole. So because of that post-pandemic boom, the low interest rates, the government money stimulus, because they gave that to everybody regardless of need.
Yeah.
They just said, we'll get it back on taxes, or we'll get it back somehow if people did need it. They said, we want to get this money in people's pockets so that the people that need it the most get
it. Right.
So people were getting money, people were getting low interest rates, and the remote work boom really led to this conglomerate of demand in the real estate market that led to extremely reduced inventory of homes. And we've seen that effect of low inventory over these last 4 years. There's a statistic that said new construction homes would have had to increase by 300% to match that post-pandemic housing boom.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about today, we're finally here, 5 minutes in, we're finally here to what we're going to talk about today, is basically that demand can swing quickly on a few factors. Supply moves much slower. For a builder to build a home today, from breaking ground to keys in the hands of a homeowner, 6 months on the short end.
Yeah.
If it's any sort of a custom build, you're probably looking closer to 8 or 9 months.
Just to touch base on that, I remember kind of when I was first getting in back in like 2012, 13, 14, like 6 months was like an absolute max. And if you got like a 9-month construction loan, that was a big, long construction loan.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And
sure.
6, but yeah, now we're talking 6 is like, if you can get it done in 6, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's speed.
Yeah.
So yes, the timing is much more different.
Right. So that time frame of the supply getting to the market is a really big challenge for increasing supply. And so we're talking today about Vice President Kamala Harris's plan for housing. She came out and I think the clip that's been getting a whole lot of legs has been her talking about a $25,000 first-time home buyer incentive, down payment assistance. It's yet to be known how that assistance comes about, if there's a payback period to that assistance. Here's the thing, nothing in life is free, guys.
Yeah.
25, this sounds great. And I'm sure there's a lot of first-time home buyers that are, I think what's dangerous about this is a lot of potential buyers are maybe putting their housing decisions on hold now.
Yeah.
Because this was announced, because she said this, saying, well, I don't want to miss out on $25,000.
And we can document this because this has happened. When student loans went through this.
Yes.
Everyone delayed their plans to how they were going to pay back their student loans, or if they were, because they wanted to wait and see. And you can't really blame people when there's talking about being an incentive. But yes, I agree with you. Now people are reconsidering, should I wait? Should I hold off?
Right. And that was, me being, almost 38 years old. I paid my student loans off long ago. So I'm sitting here like, well, what was my advantage to, doing that responsibly?
Yeah.
But I agree. I think this is a really similar thread to student loans, in the sense that this is a Band-Aid to me. This is saying, affordability is, don't get me wrong, affordability is tough.
Yes.
We are seeing record low affordability levels in our country for housing. And that's a challenge, and I understand that. And something needs to be done. But an incentive for first-time buyers is a Band-Aid to the problem overall.
Yes.
because if we're giving 4 million first-time home buyers over a 4-year period, $25,000, and says on average $25,000. So it could be more, could be less, but on average, we're giving first-time home buyers $25,000. It might get some of these buyers into homes, but it's also increasing buyer demand in a market that we're not inputting enough inventory.
Right. And I think a big concern maybe for a lot of folks with the 25,000 is that just going to get rolled into prices further? So, and to a degree, have I done my own cost benefit analysis? No, but I would venture to say right off the bat, you're just going to see a jump up in prices, which then does that help affordability? And
right.
The answer probably is not to the degree that we need it.
Yeah, so you make a good point. We're talking about affordability, and affordability is really measured with 3 key indicators, 3 key inputs, and that's the interest rates for mortgages, because that affects what your monthly payment would be, home prices, and then the third one is your incomes.
Okay. Yeah.
And so here we are, we're waiting for affordability to return, and we're seeing good signs in the interest rate environment, but here's the challenge is we're only getting those signs because of what's happening in the economy, right?
Correct.
So we're getting better interest rates and better indicators that interest rates are coming down, but we're getting that because
the economy's slowing down.
The economy's slowing down. People are losing their jobs. Incomes are slowing down.
Yeah.
So affordability improves one way and decreases in another way. And this is the constant balance of the market. This is the push and pull of monetary policy. This is why when someone asks me, is now a good time to buy a home? My answer is not yes or no. It's when the time is right for you to buy a home is the right time to buy a home.
Yep.
Do you need to buy a home? Does your family need you to buy a home? Does your life circumstances need you to buy a home? All these are the questions that you ask yourself, and then we make it happen in, the market that we have. You do what you can with what you have, with where you are. That's one of my favorite sayings. And it's really relatable here to the housing market.
Yeah. It's a personalized experience for everyone, right? There's no blanket environment out there that should suggest, hey, it's a good time to buy, sell, or what you should do. It's really about your personal facets of life and finances.
And this is one of the things I love about, your content on social media, Seth, is you're not ever giving a blanket answer.
Oh.
It's always contextual. It's always, reach out with your personal questions and situations. Because anyone that does say like, now is the time to buy a home. I see some automated social media content is like, here's your top 5 reasons to buy this fall. And I just hate those reasons, because those are not good reasons to buy if your personal situation doesn't warrant it.
Yeah. And 3, I understand the premise behind a lot of that stuff. And probably 3 of the 5 are really solid points. And it's not that I disagree. It's just more of, I like to look at each person's scenario differently. I just look at my life in various times. And, there were times where people were buying houses. It wasn't a good time for me. I think the first one is when the $8,000 tax credit came out after the great financial crisis. I didn't buy. I wasn't in a position.
But it was free money. Why didn't you?
Exactly. It was free money. I should have. Everyone's saying I should have bought a house.
Right.
Well, I wasn't in a position to. That was shame on me, I guess. Looking back, it was shame on me. But that was not a good time for me to buy. So, right along these lines.
That is exactly what I was trying to think of earlier, was going backwards to that $8,000 credit back then. Over the last, I've been in real estate now over 11 years. And so over my 11 years, I would get questions of people asking me, are they still doing that? And I would get them as recently as last year.
Same.
No, do they still do that $8,000 home buyer credit? And, my response to that has always been, well, they did that to stimulate demand, and we don't need demand stimulated. And here we are with Vice President Kamala Harris making this potential offer to stimulate demand. And me personally, I just don't think the market needs it. And I know those first-time home buyers need it, but what they don't need handout. They maybe need Maybe they need some other benefits and guidelines. Maybe it's a reduction in interest rate. Maybe it's 0% FHA down payment program that keeps more money in their pocket. But just giving the money out, I only see it as a detriment to. I see it benefiting few buyers, but hurting the larger picture in the future of the housing market as a whole.
I would totally agree with you. I do think finding ways to incentivize and make housing more affordable for either a first-time home buyer or those that would be deemed, low to moderate income. I think those are great. I would be all in support of things like that. While I haven't seen the full plan here, I do think, like you have mentioned several times here, this feels like more like we're incentivizing demand, or we're creating more demand. We're not creating more affordability through it.
All right, man. Well, I don't want to beat the dead horse. All things housing. I'm glad that housing is on the White House's mind.
Yeah,
I think that's important. I think the $25,000 is kind of the highlighted talking point that's been getting the most press. But I do think that she also presented some other things that are important to stimulating that supply as well. So she talks about creating a tax incentive that encourages builders to build starter homes, because the smaller home you build, the more affordable price point they will be. And so that's stimulating that demand or that supply there. Also expanding tax incentives for builders that build rental housing. A third of the country always rents. Yeah, a lot of people think they have to buy a house. You don't have to buy a house. A third of the country is renters, will always be renters, and that's okay. But that's a part of housing that's in short supply too. So incentivizing some of those things. The problem though with the plan as a whole, as she laid it out, is that $25,000 will spike the demand, but all the other incentives to build supply are a much, much slower build. And that's my concern with the plan. Yeah. I think we need to focus on supply as a whole, incentivizing supply, because guess what? These builders are not a charity. They're not just building homes to give out to the market. They're doing it as a business. They're doing it to make money. And so unless they are incentivized to do it in a way that benefits the market, they're going to do it in a way that benefits themselves, their bottom line, their shareholders, and themselves. So
I agree. And I think that is the key point. There are a lot of first-time home buyers, they want to be able to, for our market, for example, they want to be able to get into a mortgage where their payment a lot, not all, but a lot, maybe $1,000 to $1,500. And when you really start to go look out what's available in inventory in our market, there's just not a whole lot of options to buy with a minimum, a low down payment, and get a resulting mortgage payment there. And then even from a rental aspect and talking with people, depending on your needs and where you need to be, even renting somewhat in that price window is becoming more and more of a challenge.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, we'll fix all of the world's problems another day, but at least today we're talking about it. We're getting some of this information out to the world. We're putting some context to the headlines and some context to kind of just the news cycle and the election cycle as far as what affects us in housing. You will not hear me speak on anything else political because I do not know anything else political. I'm focused on my little lane of Fort Wayne real estate and my little family of 5 at home too. That's about all I have the energy to focus on right now. I know you're at a similar busy lifestyle.
Absolutely. Yeah, this just jumped off the page, and the already controversy around it. And it's something we got to dabble in a little bit because it does affect us. But yeah, I'm right there. I'll stick to this. Let's see how we can help our market navigate something such as this.
Yep. All right, man. All right. Thanks for joining me. And remember, guys, keep it real estate out there.